What if the most sacred, unshakable institution on earth, the Catholic Church, was completely shaken in just 19 days, not by scandal, not by politics, but by one man who dared to live what he preached? What would make over 1 billion Catholics ask themselves, is this guy even real? This isn't fiction. This is the story of Pope Leo XIV. And what he did in less than 3 weeks has left bishops speechless, cardinals stunned, and the Vatican, well, let's just say they didn't see this coming. Let me take you back, because to truly understand the miracle unfolding today, you need to know where it all began. But first, pause for a second. Drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. Because what you're about to hear, it matters to every corner of the Catholic world, maybe even beyond. And honestly, something tells me this story found you for a reason. Okay, now picture this. It's the 2nd of July, 1987. No Vatican, no throne, no flowing white robes or golden rings. Instead, we're in a tiny, sun-scorched village in rural Peru, a place so remote you won't find it on most maps. Dust hangs in the air. The wind carries the scent of wood smoke and earth. Life here is hard. A young missionary named Father Roberta Man, whose name the world barely knew at the time, is spending his days serving the poorest of the poor. That morning, something unforgettable happens. A little boy barefoot, frantic, comes running toward him. His face is streaked with dirt and tears. He's barely able to speak through his sobs, but the message is clear. His sister is dying, and there's no priest around to help. Without hesitation, Father Robert rises. No questions, no delay. He grabs what little he needs and follows the boy. But this isn't a simple walk down a paved street. The path to the boy's village is 2 miles of pure, torment-jagged rocks, thick thorns, burning heat. It's the kind of terrain that would stop most people in their tracks. And the boy? He's not wearing shoes. No one in his village does. They simply can't afford them. That's when Father Robert does something that would change everything. Quietly, without a word, he takes off his own shoes. And he walks. Step by agonizing step, under the blistering sun, with blood slowly seeping from his feet. The rocks tear at his skin, thorns rip into his soles, but he keeps going, not out of doubt of love. And when he finally reaches the village, he's greeted not with applause, not with gratitude, but with something deeper. An old woman, hunched and worn from years of hardship, sees his bleeding feet. She walks over, trembling. She takes his hand, kisses it gently, and whispers something that still gives me chills. "You came like us. Now, we believe you." That sentence? It planted a seed that would one day bloom in the heart of the Catholic Church. From that day on, Father Robert made a quiet vow. He would never wear shoes again unless the people around him could afford to wear them too. Fast forward to today. That same Mano, known as Pope Leo XIV, Thackeray's that same vow into the Vatican. And he wants every bishop, every cardinal, every leader of the Church to understand what that old woman meant. Think about it. If you truly want to lead people, shouldn't you be willing to walk with theme even barefoot, if that's what it takes? Now, imagine being a bishop who's spent decades in luxury, suddenly told, "You must walk through the streets without shoes." Some were shocked. Others felt humiliated. But Pope Leo? He didn't flinch. He knew exactly why it mattered. And if you thought that was radical, just wait until you hear what he did next. This one, it almost feels unbelievable. So after challenging bishops to walk barefoot and opening the Vatican's private gardens to the homeless, you might have thought Pope Leo had already pushed the limits. But as it turns out, he was just getting started. When some Vatican officials raised eyebrows and, trust me, more than a few did about letting homeless people sleep in the sacred gardens, Pope Leo responded with something both simple and profound. If the Garden of Eden was meant to be shared, then so should ours. But where did that deep sense of compassion come from? Why does this matter to him on such a raw, personal level? To understand that, we have to go back to January 1979. Back then, Pope Leo wasn't His Holiness. He was just Robert, a young college student volunteering at a modest soup kitchen on the south side of Chicago. Nothing glamorous, nothing dramatic. Just a humble routine every Wednesday night, handing out bowls of hot stew to anyone who needed it. It was the kind of quiet, consistent kindness most people would never even notice. But one freezing night, something happened that changed Robert's heart forever. The soup kitchen had closed for the night. The lights were off, the doors locked. Robert was walking home, jacket pulled tight against the brutal Chicago wind. You know that kind of cold that bites straight through your clothes and makes your teeth ache? It was one of those nights. As he passed the church steps, he saw a figure huddled there, an elderly man, wrapped in nothing but newspaper. His legs were trembling violently. His face was pale, barely lifting from his chest. He looked invisible to the world. Robert stopped. Then, without saying a word, he sat down next to the man. No questions, no handouts, no sermon, just presence. They sat like that for what felt like hours, two strangers sharing the silence in the cold. Eventually, Robert stood up to leave. That's when the old man, shivering and weak, whispered six words that would echo in Robert's heart for decades to come. "Thank you for seeing me." Let that sink in. He wasn't asking for money, not even food. He was simply grateful to be seen. That moment burned itself into Robert's soul. And now, as Pope Leo XIV, he's made it his mission to ensure that those whom society has rendered invisible, the poor, the forgotten, the overlooked, are seen, heard, and honored, even in the most sacred corners of the church. And the changes don't stop there. In a move that's subtle but powerful, Pope Leo has quietly begun dressing differently. Less gold, smaller, humbler crosses, simple white robes, replacing the traditional ornate outfits we usually associate with the papacy. Don't get it wrong, during major formal events, he still respects the traditional vestments, but during regular church functions, he looks more like your everyday parish priest than the leader of over 1 billion souls. And when photographers try to capture the richness of his garments, he politely asks them not to. Someone once asked him why he chose a plain robe for a massive public mass. His answer? Pure brilliance. People are hungry for truth, not fabric. That answer traces back to his early years as an Augustinian friar. When he took his vows in 1981, he promised a life of simplicity and humility. No flashy displays, no special treatment. He served meals from the back of the room instead of taking a seat at the head table. He wore the same black robe every single day. And even when he became a bishop, he refused to upgrade to custom-tailored garments or wear gilded chains. There's a beautiful memory from his time in Peru. While visiting a rural parish, a young girl glanced down at his old, worn shoes and smiled. She looked up at him and said, "You dress like our fathers. You must care like they do too." Isn't that the heart of leadership? When people don't see your title or your wealth, they just see your heart? And that brings us to his fourth major change, one that has sparked some curiosity and even controversy in certain circles. So let's explain it carefully. Pope Leo has started making small but meaningful adjustments to church prayers and liturgies, introducing more inclusive language. Now, before anyone panics, she's not rewriting the Bible, and he's not altering doctrine. These are gentle updates, intended to ensure that everyone feels welcomed at the table. For example, where prayers once said brothers, they now say brothers and sisters. In some cases, references to the faithful use gender, neutral terms. These are not radical rewrites. They're compassionate acknowledgments that God's family includes everyone, regardless of gender or background. And when asked why he made these changes, Pope Leo gave a response that feels like it belongs carved in marble. God speaks to every heart. Our language should not block the sound of his voice. That perspective comes straight from his time serving in Peru between 1985 and 1994 years spent listening to countless voices from different walks of life, languages, and stories. He learned firsthand that inclusion isn't political, it's pastoral. After softening centuries-old liturgies with more inclusive language, Pope Leo didn't slow down. In fact, what came next was a bold expansion of his vision that stretched from the pews to the planet itself and from the Vatican all the way to the Amazon rainforest. Some of the changes Pope Leo began making may seem small on the surface, but to the people experiencing them, they meant everything. There were women who, for the first time in their lives, were invited to speak in church, something they'd never been asked to do before. There were entire families, mothers, fathers, and children who finally felt like they belonged, despite how they looked, where they came from, or what their stories were. One day, while speaking with a local catechist in a remote village, Pope Leo said something that captures his mission in just a few words. If the gospel makes someone feel left out, we've told it wrong. Let that sink in. Not diluted, not rebranded, just retold with love and clarity. There's one story I'll never forget. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Mass was being held under a tree, literally beneath the branches and open sky, because the community had no formal church building. After the Mass ended, an elderly woman approached him. Tears streamed down her face. She could barely get the words out. "I finally heard myself in the prayer today. Thank you." Sometimes saying, "You belong," isn't just symbolic. Sometimes it's the first step to making it true. And just when you think Pope Leo's mission couldn't grow any bigger, he surprises everyone again. He's launched an ambitious, game-changing project, the Green Vatican Initiative. Its goal? To make Vatican City 100% carbon neutral by 2030. That's right. The church that's been around for nearly 2 millennia is now planting trees, cutting plastic use, embracing solar energy, reducing waste, and reimagining its environmental footprint. And on May 20th, 2025, Pope Leo made his vision crystal clear. We cannot preach care for the soul while ignoring the home that holds it. The earth is God's gift. We must protect it. Some called this unrealistic. Others said, finally. But for Pope Leo, this wasn't just a climate policy, it was faith in action. The roots of this conviction trace back to 1992. Father Robert, still young, still unknown, traveled to a village near the Amazon rainforest. He expected lush greenery, endless trees, and vibrant life. Instead, he found destruction. The rainforest? Clear-cut. The sky? Clouded with thick smoke from land-burning fires. The children? Coughing from polluted air. And the river, once crystal clear, was now choked with waste. And then came the moment he'd never forget. A little girl, no older than 8, with wide, heartbroken eyes, looked up at him and said, "We can't pray under the trees anymore. They're all gone." That sentence landed like a stone in his chest. Because how can children pray under the sky? when even the sky has stopped listening. That image never left him, and now, as Pope Leo I, he sees care for the environment not as a side project, but as part of the Church's sacred duty. As he once said so powerfully, "There is no holiness in stained glass if the sky above it is dying." And yet, he didn't stop there. The next change he's made has people talking across every continent, and it's nothing short of revolutionary. Pope Leo is decentralizing church, power-giving local dioceses more authority than ever before. Traditionally, every major decision had to flow through Romea process that could take months, even years. But now, local bishops can make key decisions for their communities faster, more relevant, and more culturally sensitive. From language and liturgical style to pastoral care and cultural customs, Pope Leo's approach is simple. Let local churches serve their people in the way that fits them best. And in a private meeting with church leaders, he put it this way: "You cannot lead a village from a balcony in Rome. You must be close enough to hear their voice." That lesson, it came straight from his time in Peru, back in 1988. He was sent to a mountain parish deep in the Andes. No phone, no electricity, no quick access to Rome. At first, he thought the community was chaotic, doing things their own way. They held baptisms and Bible studies on their own, created their own songs, even conducted funerals without ever contacting church headquarters. But soon, he realized the truth. They weren't disobedient, they were devoted. They weren't waiting for permission to serve their people, they were already doing it, and they were doing it well. Pope Leo learned early on that leadership doesn't always mean giving commands from the top. Sometimes it means standing quietly beside the people and learning to hear God's voice in unexpected places. At first, Father Robert, future Pope Leo, thought things in that tiny Peruvian mountain parish were disorganized. There were no formal instructions coming from Lima, no bishops double-checking every move, no chain of command. But over time, something shifted. He began to see a kind of beauty in the way the villagers lived and served. They weren't waiting for approval from some faraway office. They were serving straight from the heart. One Sunday, curious and humbled, he asked the village elder, "Why don't you ever call the main office in Lima for help when you're unsure?" The elder just smiled and said something that Pope Leo would carry with him for the rest of his life. "Because God already lives here, we just listen." That one line changed everything. It transformed how he saw leadership, not as control from above, but as trust from within. And now, as Pope Leo I, he's doing exactly that. Calling the Church to trust its people, Moreto believed that wisdom isn't reserved for those in red robes and golden rings. Sometimes, the best leadership starts by listening to the flock. And that brings us to Pope Leo's seventh major change zone that might just be the most timely of all: dialogue with other religions. In a world where people are divided by faith, politics, borders, you name it, Pope Leo is planting seeds of something radical: understanding. He's launched interfaith councils all over the globe. Each one brings together priests, scholars, everyday Catholics, and representatives from Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, and other world religions. The goal? Not to argue, not to convert, not to compete, but to listen, to learn, and to serve together. On May 22, 2025, during a global press briefing, Pope Leo said something that could stop you in your tracks. Faith should not be used to build walls. It should be used to build tables. And those words weren't just poetic, they were born out of something deeply personal. Back in 1990, he visited a refugee camp in northern Peru. place filled with Catholics, Muslims, indigenous people, and others with no formal religion at all. He didn't go there to evangelize. He went to help distributing food, water, blankets, and hope. One quiet afternoon, he sat beside a Muslim nurse who had just finished tending to a sick child. The child finally fell asleep, peaceful and warm. And there, in the quiet stillness, they prayed each in their own way. Afterward, the nurse turned to him and said something that struck him like lightning. We may speak to God in different languages, but He hears the same pain. Years later, while studying in Chicago, he lived in neighborhoods where synagogues, mosques, and churches stood side by side. It was there he truly grasped a life-changing idea. Sometimes the best way to lead is just to listen. And now, as Pope, he's putting that into action. He believes silence between faiths doesn't create peace, it creates fear and misunderstanding. So he's building a platform where different voices can come together, not to change each other, but to know each other. Because in his words, if peace is ever going to last, it must start with a handshake and not a sermon. But perhaps the boldest and most uncomfortable change Pope Leo has made so far? It's about money. And it's shaking up a system that's been opaque for centuries. The eighth change is about transparency. Pope Leo has ordered independent audits of the Vatican's finances, not once, every year, and more than tithes making key financial reports public, so that regular Catholics everywhere can see exactly how their donations are being used. No more secrecy. No more vague answers. No more wondering if your tithes are going to missions or just marble floors. On May 24th, 2025, Pope Leo said something that shook financial departments to their core. If we ask the faithful to give with open hearts, we must manage those gifts with open books. That wisdom comes straight from experience. Back in 2001, he was appointed head of the Augustinian order worldwide. And yes, it was a spiritual role. But it also meant overseeing budgets, staff, buildings, global programs, and complex operations across continents. One day, he discovered missing funds in a local project. And instead of quietly moving on, he dove in head first. He pulled receipts, asked hard questions, and made the tough, necessary changes. Later, he reflected on that season with brutal honesty. Money isn't the problem, silence is. Now, as Pope Leo, he wants every Catholic from the mega donor to the person giving their last $10 to know where their gift is going and how it's helping others. It's not about perfection, it's about accountability. For Pope Leo, transparency isn't just about numbers, it's about trust. The truth, he once said, should not be hidden in a drawer. It should be placed on the altar for everyone to see. And nowhere is that more apparent than in how he's giving young people a real seat at the table. The ninth change, it's about the next generation. And honestly, it's brilliant. Pope Leo has launched a sweeping initiative. Global Youth Councils. These aren't symbolic committees or photo ops. They're real working groups made up of young Catholics from across the world, from different nations, cultures, and life experiences. Their mission? To meet regularly online and in person and bring their honest ideas straight to church leadership. They talk about faith, yes, but also technology, mental health, education, social justice, and what it truly means to be Catholic in the modern world. And when Pope Leo announced this on May 25, 2025, he didn't speak like a distant leader. He spoke like a man who remembered what it felt like to be ignored. He said, "Too often, we preach to the youth without asking what they see, what they feel, or what they hope for. We cannot lead them if we do not listen to them." That belief comes from his early days in Peru during the 1990s. After Mass, under the shade of a wide mango tree, he would gather children and teens not to lecture them, but to ask questions. He'd help with homework. He'd strum his old guitar and play music. He'd teach them how to pray not from a book, but from the heart. And one day, a boy named Julio, about 15, looked him in the eye and asked, "Father, why does no one in Rome ever ask what we think?" Robert paused, then smiled. Maybe one day they will. And now, as Pope Leo I, he's kept that promise. These youth councils are already underway. Some of their members have been invited to Rome, face to face with cardinals and Vatican officials. And the effect? Tremendous. After one meeting, a girl from Nigeria was interviewed. Her words said it all. "I never thought someone in the Vatican would care about what I had to say. Now I know they do." For Pope Leo, this isn't about ticking a box or appeasing the young. It's about shaping a church that hears them, walks with them, and grows through them. Because as he once said, "A church that speaks to youth is strong, but a church that listens to youth will last forever." And finally, we come to the 10th change. It might seem unexpected at first, but in typical Pope Leo fashion, it's deeply rooted in both grace and humanity. He's bringing back something many believed was fading, the traditional confessional. Not just in symbols or statements, but in practice. He's asked priests around the world to spend more time in confessionals, to keep them open throughout the week, not just on Sundays. Why? Because he believes confession isn't something to fear. It's something that heals. On May 26, 2025, standing beside a time-worn wooden confessional in St. Peter's Basilica, he said something that could melt even the hardest heart. "In this box, the soul learns to breathe again. We must return to it not because of guilt, but because of grace." Yes, he acknowledges the world has changed. Some people now process their sins online, in journals, or in silent prayer. And Pope Leo doesn't diminish those forms of reflection. But he also believes something timeless. Confession isn't just about saying, "I'm sorry." It's about being seen, completely forgiven, and truly set free. This belief goes back to his quiet, faithful years in Peru in the late 1980s. Father Robert would sit for hours in a small, unassuming wooden booth waiting. Often, no one came. Still, he waited. He once said, "If someone builds the courage to walk through that door, I want to already be there waiting." One evening, just before closing time, a man walked in. His shoulders were stiff, his eyes were hard, his voice trembled as he spoke. He hadn't been to confession in over 30 years. He cried. Right there in the middle of his words, the man broke down. And when he finally finished his confession, he looked through the screen with eyes full of regret and whispered, "Is it too late to be clean again?" Father Robert, still a young priest, then didn't preach. He didn't quote scripture. He simply reached out, placed his hand gently on the wooden divider between them, and said, "It's never too late." That moment never left him. And today, as Pope Leo I, he's not reviving old traditions for the sake of nostalgia. He's doing it because he believes this generation, our generation, is carrying a weight of quiet, invisible pain. And he knows, sometimes the first step toward peace is simply having a place to kneel. When you kneel in confession, he once said, you don't kneel in weakness, you kneel in hope. So now, take a step back. Let it all sink in. These are 10 powerful changes, all within just 19 days, and they're already shaking the foundations of the modern Catholic Church. Barefoot bishops walking in solidarity with the poor, Vatican gardens opened each night to shelter the homeless. Humble robes replacing golden thrones. Prayers that speak to every nino, just the familiar. A church finally fighting for the earth instead of just preaching over it. Transparent financial books, open to all. Dialogue across religions, building tables, not walls. Local churches, trusted to serve in their own voice. Young people leading, advising, being heard at the highest levels. And confessionals quiet, wooden boxes, brought back as sanctuaries of healing. But here's the truth behind all of this. None of these changes came from a textbook. Not one came from strategy meetings or Vatican debates. Every single reform came from a moment of deep human connection. The barefoot processions, born from a rocky path in Peru and a bleeding-footed priest who refused to walk where others had none. The garden shelters, they came from a freezing old man on church steps in Chicago whispering, "Thank you for seeing me." The simple papal garments, inspired by days of washing dishes and sitting at the back, unnoticed but present. Inclusive prayers, sparked by an elderly woman who finally heard her story in sacred words for the first time. The Green Vatican, rooted in the sorrow of a little girl who said she could no longer pray under trees because they were all gone. Local leadership? It came from a village elder's quiet wisdom. God already lives here. We just listen. Do you see the pattern? Pope Leo isn't just leading the church. He's listening to the world. He's following the gospel, not the one wrapped in centuries of rules, but the original gospel, Jesus on dusty roads, Jesus with fishermen, sinners, outcasts, and children. Jesus who lived simply, spoke clearly, loved wildly, and walked with bare feet and open hands. And now, it's your turn. Because the story doesn't end here. If this moved you, if even one moment in this journey stirred something in your heart, click that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more powerful stories, just like this one. And in the comments, tell us, which of Pope Leo's 10 changes spoke to you the most? We read every single one. This is a community, and your voice belongs here. Because if Pope Leo has shown us anything, it's this. True change doesn't begin in marble halls. It begins where the ground is uneven, where the shoes come off, where the heart cracks open just enough for grace to walk in. So don't just watch history happen. Be part of it. Let's walk this road together. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.